I'm going to show you where to get a spell that buffs weapon damage and fire damage. You know, fire spells, incantations, that kind of thing. It's called Flame Grant Me Strength. A really funny name. It's a buff spell, so you'll cast it. It's an incantation spell. Uses, let's take a look at it actually. Over in spells. So it is 28 FP to cast, and it only requires 15 faith to use. So even if you're not a faith build, it might be worth building 5 faith points just so you can cast a spell, because if you're using any kind of melee weapon, you might as well use it because it'll increase your melee damage. And if you are actually a faith user and you're using lots of fire spells, then you're absolutely going to want this because it's going to buff those by even more than it buffs the weapon damage by. To find the spell, you'll need to go to Fort Gale North. It is over here on the map, so it's not too hard to get to. It's pretty close to the start of the game, actually. Start of the game being down the left of that lake. So you'll go up here to Fort Gale North. This is the Grace. And from here, you're going to head up this ledge to this castle. And behind the castle is where the spell, the incantation will be. But I'll just go ahead and show you. It'll only take like, what, 20 seconds or so for me to get up there. So you're just going to ignore everything if you're low level. You fight your way through if you want to. But if you're just after the spell, it's not even worth the time. So you're going to go up this way to get along behind the castle. And then right back here are 2 really wacky enemies you might not have seen before. And the incantation was right here on that body. So that's the body that'll have it on the backside of this fort, the North Gale Ruins. Okay, so now that I have the spell, which I already have, but, you know, now you know where to get it, now it's time to test it. Make sure to aggro. I'm going to make sure to aggro these enemies so that they do consistent damage. You do bonus damage to enemies if they don't detect you. So I got to make sure they see me. Okay, so a normal swing is 394. And if I buff myself, instead, I'm going to hit for 448. Okay. And then my flame spell hits for 1,846 with the buff. Now I gotta wait for it to wear off. It's a 30-second buff, I'm pretty sure. Now I gotta wait for it to wear off. Okay, the buff has now worn off. I gotta make sure these guys are aggro. I'm gonna tap them once. Oh, that's not how I want that to go. 1,709. There we go. That's the difference. Let me do some math real fast. Okay, so this spell will give you a 10% increase in just raw weapon damage, and it will give you a 20% increase in any kind of flame attack that you do, whether it's that or whether it's throwing a fireball or whatever other fire attack you do. Those have a 20% increase, which is very significant, honestly, in a game like Elden Ring. Especially if you stack it with some other stuff, it really can start to get exponential the more stuff you stack for damage. I did some additional testing after that, and for some reason, on a just random straight sword, it was doing 20% increased damage. So maybe something about having a sword that actually has a fire affinity actually hurts how much it buffs it. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's because it's split between magic and fire. That's probably what it is right there. The magic and the fire part of the damage does not get the buff. It's only the physical part for a weapon. Even though that's fire, that one maybe doesn't count. Or maybe that it does and the magic didn't count and that, you know, somehow equaled out to where it maybe get exactly 10% basically. Just know that's probably best though. If fire works, you can get fire and physical. Otherwise, you want a weapon that's just straight physical for all your damage as much as possible to get the max out of this spell. I personally am really glad I found this spell because it's nice when you go into a boss room to pop the spell, not that button, to pop the spell and then go through the mist and then enter the boss fight. So the first 30 seconds, you can just do way more damage to him, like a noticeable amount of damage, especially if you are a faith user who uses fire spells. But either way, that is the Flame Grant Me Strength incantation, a super OP spell to have in your arsenal. Again, near the Fort Gale North. That's how you get that incantation. I highly recommend getting it if it's applicable to your build, which is applicable to most builds other than mages. A pure mage, it might not be applicable because you're not using fire and you're not using your actual weapon. But for everyone else, it's going to be a very useful incantation to have. I highly recommend picking it up. That is Flame Grant Me Strength, and now you know where to find it in Elden Ring.